Hey everybody, this is Mike Guglielmi from Sons of a Pitch, an American soccer podcast. I am joined tonight by my co-host Nick Pateris on the line. We are going to talk MLS Season Preview for this 2020 season that's getting underway in just a few days, the 25th season in MLS. Now, make sure you stay tuned. We're going to discuss some of the new stars that have come into MLS this season, as well as our predictions for all of the major awards. And then the most important thing is who's going to win the trophies, who's going to make the playoffs. We're going to give you our picks and predictions for who that will be. So make sure to stay tuned all the way to the end of this video for that information. So without further ado, let's get into it. I am upping the ante on our 1,000 YouTube subscriber challenge. All you have to do is subscribe down below and then follow us on your favorite social media platform, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. So do those two things and you will be put into a drawing if we reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the day, March 1st. Then the winner will not receive a $100 Visa gift card. They will receive a $250 Visa gift card. So get on it. Make sure you subscribe down below and add us on your favorite social media platform. Let's start talking about this season, the 25th season in MLS history. Started back in 1996. The league has come an extremely long way since that point. 10 teams back in 1996, the 10 starting out, and some of those teams were relocated. Some, ended up getting their teams back, and now we sit with 26 teams with a couple more slated to join the league in the next few years. The league has grown. We've seen MLS 2.0, 3.0. Some are even calling this 4.0 now. But I'm pumping the brakes on that one. I still think it's 3.0. MLS is an up-and-coming league that's getting better. We're seeing a shift. A lot of players coming from Liga MX to MLS this offseason. And some of the new stars that we've seen come in are Lucas Zelarayan from Tigres. They're of Liga MX. The attacking midfielder for one of the best teams in Liga MX coming over to the Columbus Crew. A great signing for the Crew to replace Federico Higuain. Pablo Piatti comes over from Espanyol over in La Liga to Toronto FC as their third designated player this season. It's really a swing for the fences type of deal here. TFC, if he's healthy, they're banking on his health as well as Josie Altidor's health, and they could see great things out of Pablo Piatti. He has the pedigree, he has the skill. The question is, can he stay healthy? Jurgen Locadia joins FC Cincinnati from Brighton Hove and Albion over in the English Premier League. Yes, we are starting to see guys come from the EPL to MLS. There haven't been many that have done it, but Jurgen Locadia could do big things for Cincinnati this season. Also, probably the biggest signing, some are touting it as the biggest signing in MLS history, Javier Chicharito Hernandez comes over from Sevilla in La Liga. Had plenty of time in the Premier League with Manchester United, West Ham. He's been all over the place, got his start in Liga MX, and is really the golden boy of the Mexican national team. He comes over to the LA Galaxy. Rodolfo Pizarro comes over from Monterrey, comes to Inter Miami, the expansion side, as they're a number 10 / forward with their injury struggles to start out the season. As well, Alan Pulido comes over from Chivas. The striker goes to Sporting Kansas City, a team who normally does not spend money like this, so it's nice to see them spend some money and jump in and sign a guy like Alan Pulido. It could reap wonderful benefits for Sporting Kansas City, and I know their fans are extremely excited about this season. Lucas Cavallini is another player that made the jump from Liga MX over to MLS, joining Vancouver Whitecaps. Just like Sporting Kansas City, a team that really hasn't been spending a ton of money. However, they did get a good amount of money when they sold Alphonso Davies, who continues to start week in and week out for one of the biggest clubs in the world in Bayern Munich. So they're starting to spend that money. They bring in Lucas Cavallini from Puebla, expecting big things out of El Tanque, if that's how you say it, the tank in Spanish. So also Edison Flores, another player from Liga MX in Monarcas Morelia, comes over to join DC United as their number 10. Also, Eunice Namley from FC Trabzonspor in the Russian Premier League. Comes over to Colorado Rapids. Lots of good talent is making their way into MLS. It's really changed. This league has changed so much over the 25 years to the fact that we're bringing in so many big-time names, so many big-time players, and the trend is starting to shift from Liga MX over to MLS. Now, the next section of this show, we're going to discuss the awards, the MLS annual awards. What do we think will? Who do we think will win these awards? Starting out with the most important award, that is the MVP award, the Landon Donovan MVP trophy. Who's going to be that most important and most valuable player for their team? This season, my pick is Pity Martinez from Atlanta United. I expect Atlanta to do big things. Pity Martinez is a couple years removed from being the CONMEBOL Player of the Year. You don't win that award if you're a slouch. You got to be a hell of a player. He is just that. I think he had his transition period coming into the league from River Plate, and really learned the league. The coach, Frank de Boer, they had their disagreements, but he's had that transition period, and I expect him to do big things this year for Atlanta United. So he is my pick. Nick, who is your pick for MVP?
Well, what have you done for me lately? Pity Martinez was the CONMEBOL Player of the Year, 2016, 2017, something like that, Mike? So you're right, he has struggled to adjust to the game. Atlanta is poised to have another great season. But I am going with Maxi Morales as my pick for the Landon Donovan League MVP award. He finished, I think, second or third last year in the MVP voting. I think NYC is poised to have a great year, and if they do, it's going to be because of Maxi Morales. I think if you go back and listen to our NYC prediction video, we talk about him quite a bit. He is the driving force for that offense. He can distribute, he can possess, he's got great technical ability, and he can also find the back of the net. So he can put up numbers. You obviously have guys like Joseph Martinez or Carlos Vela who can put up 20 to 30 goals, if not more, every season. But Maxi Morales is going to get the assists, he's going to get the completed passes, he's going to get all the advanced stats that I think a lot of the MVP voters are also looking at more than just who scored the most goals.
The Golden Boot. So that's the next award that I want to discuss. The Golden Boot, who's going to score the most goals in MLS this season? My pick is Josie Altidore from Toronto FC. You're probably thinking, wow, that's a homer pick. Come on, Mike, as I am a TFC fan. I expect big things out of Josie Altidore this season. He is due. He has had a couple rough seasons, not playing in a ton of matches, so I really expect him to do big things this upcoming season and actually be able to stay healthy this year. Knock on some wood. So that is my pick for Golden Boot. I'm thinking somewhere in the 23 to 25 goal range. Nick, what are your thoughts on the Golden Boot for this season?
So I'm going to go with Vela again this year. I think he repeats as the Golden Boot winner. My dark horse pick, though, just to kind of hedge my bets a little here, I think Alan Pulido, the new signing of Kansas City, could kind of have that Zlatan effect where all their offense is going to funnel through him. So he's going to get tons of opportunities. And if he can convert at the rate he was converting for Liga MX, then he could have 25 to 30 goals this year and probably run away with the Golden Boot.
So speaking of Alan Pulido, he kind of factors into my pick for the Newcomer of the Year. There's lots of good names. We just talked about a bunch of them here earlier in this episode. But I think Alan Pulido is really going to take that next step and really turn the corner for Sporting Kansas City. I think not just the goals, but he's got a great surrounding cast there with Johnny Russell and Gutierrez. I think is really going to help his play and elevate him. The guy won the Golden Boot in Mexico just last season. I think he can really have a great season for Sporting Kansas City and help that team resurrect from the rough season that they had last year. So I expect Alan Pulido to win the Newcomer of the Year award. Nick, who do you have as Newcomer of the Year?
I picked Chicharito, Javier Hernandez. He has already been anointed the greatest signing in MLS history. So I think there's already that bias that he's going to be Newcomer of the Year. The only thing working against him in a lot of these fan voting, not fan voting, but in a lot of these voting situations where you have reporters and media and whoever, and it's across all sports in America, is that usually there's a little bit of an East Coast bias, partly because that's where a lot of these publications and entities are based, but partly because no one's staying up late and watching LA home games at like 11 p.m. Central or Eastern time or something like that. So we all know Chicharito is going to get the headlines. He's going to be a very focal point of that Galaxy offense. He's going to draw in a whole new demographic of fan to the MLS. So for all those reasons, I think he gets Newcomer of the Year. Dark horse, Edison Flores, DC. The guy's going to be a goal scorer for them. Was with Peru. We'll talk about him in the DC preview that we're going to do. But he's the dark horse if he can come in and bag 20 goals or something like that.
So that takes us to the Defender of the Year. My pick for Defender of the Year is Romain Métanire from Minnesota United. He really impressed me last season when he came over. One of the best wingbacks in MLS, in my opinion. So I think he will kind of elevate to that next level, and he will get the Defender of the Year award. Nick, who's your pick for Defender of the Year?
So I'm going Miles Robinson. As much as I was saying, I think New York's going to have a great year. I think that's going to be more on the offensive front and the results front. As far as defensive play, I think Miles Robinson will be the Defender of the Year this year. He finished second in the voting last year. He is poised to have a great year with Atlanta. He is possibly going to get some more USMNT call-ups. So all of that confidence, all of that skill, and all of the talent that's on the Atlanta roster, I think bodes well for Miles Robinson personally and from a voter's perspective. But you can't count out last year's, or I shouldn't say last year's winner, last year's runner-up, Walker Zimmerman. So yeah, I think Ike Opara won it last year, and Zimmerman and Robinson were 2 and 3. So Zimmerman goes over to Nashville, goes over to the expansion side. If they make the playoffs, if they do something decent, then I could see Zimmerman sneaking in and taking it just because of his popularity now with U.S. soccer fans. All the national team call-ups he's gotten, and if he can really endear himself to Nashville and play really well, maybe he gets a little of that chip on my shoulder, I didn't know I was going to be traded type of storyline to him. I could see Zimmerman maybe coming in as a dark horse then.
All right, so for Goalkeeper of the Year, moving right along, I've got Andre Blake from Philadelphia Union. This guy is one of the best pure talented goalkeepers in MLS. He's always in that conversation, it seems like, but recently hasn't gotten it done and actually taken home the award, as it's gone to Tim Melia with Sporting Kansas City, Vito Minone last season for Minnesota. So this year I think he will help with a great season, Philadelphia Union, to take that Goalkeeper of the Year award. Nick, who's your Goalkeeper of the Year?
Matt Turner, I think, is going to be the Goalkeeper of the Year, the New England Revolution goalie. Great season last year. New England's on the rise. I think if their offense continues to grow, then he'll have an easier job. So that'll bode well for him. Either that or Sean Johnson, my close second pick over in New York City, just because, again, I think New York's going to have a great year. I think they're going to play well. I think if Johnson kind of eliminates some of those little goofy mistakes he has, those howlers, the one he let through his legs to roll into the net, I think if he can eliminate those little things and continue to get some USMNT camp call-ups, he'll be right behind Turner.
All right, so that brings us to our last award, and that award is the Coach of the Year. Coach of the Year is going to be kind of a different award. It's not going to go to the best coach with the best record. There's lots of different factors that can come into play for Coach of the Year. My pick for Coach of the Year is Robin Fraser from the Colorado Rapids. He came over last season and just really turned that team around from the depths of despair to, almost making the playoffs. Literally, they went into decision day with a chance to make the playoffs. However, they had to play LAFC, so that didn't bode very well for them. But I think he will get it done. I think he will possibly take them into the playoffs. You'll find out about that in our picks coming up shortly. And he is my pick for Coach of the Year. Nick, who do you have as Coach of the Year?
So all of that is what I also took into account. But that's why I went with Tab Ramos of Houston. He's going to turn them around. They're going to make the playoffs. They're going to have an exciting, fun, attacking team. He is going to leave his impression on that organization and finally leave his impression on the MLS. And I think he's going to be the favorite because all those things you said, plus the on-field performance, plus the fact that he's a kind of a U.S. soccer legend. I'm going to give it to Todd Ramos. But we all know Robin Fraser, too. He's got a lot of ties to the U.S. national team as well, so it wouldn't surprise me, or at least to MLS. I don't know his international career, but Robin Fraser won Defender of the Year a couple years in his playing days. So you're right. He's got some of those intangibles as well.
All right, so next up, I want to discuss a quick best 11. Every year, the league puts out their best 11. My picks for best 11 is in goal, Sean Johnson from NYCFC. At the back, Roman Metanire, Miles Robinson, and Walker Zimmerman. In the midfield, Alejandro Pozuelo, Pity Martinez, Maxi Morales, Nico Ladero from the Sounders, and up front, the three up front would be Chicharito, Javier Hernandez, Carlos Vela, and Josie Altidore. So as you can tell, that kind of is the mix of all of Nick and my picks for the awards, as well as some of the best at those positions that won't be getting awards. So that's kind of the quick best 11. Let us know down in the comments, what are your thoughts? Who do you think will be best 11 in MLS this season? Go out on a limb, make a prediction like we are. Next up, let's start talking about the teams that are going to be in the playoffs. Who are the 7 teams from the East and the Western Conference? I'm going to start out with the Eastern Conference. My picks to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference is the number 1 seed. My pick to win the East is Atlanta United, followed up by a 2nd seed of Toronto FC, 3rd seed New York City FC, 4th seed to get that last home playoff game, Philadelphia Union, the 5th seed New England Revolution, followed by Columbus Crew, and lastly, the team that snags the last playoff spot, DC United. Nick, who's your pick? What 7 teams do you have from the East?
So I have all the teams you do but one. I have one switch, but different rankings. Like I said, I've got New York City, again, atop the Eastern Conference. Not a lot of turnover, a lot of talent, and I think they're ready to win a trophy this year, whether it's a Shield, whether it's a U.S. Open Cup, something. I have Atlanta in the 2 spot, Philadelphia in the 3 spot, Toronto number 4. And fans, I'm not as high on Toronto as Mike and Dwayne Rollins were when we did our TFC preview. Like, I think you and Dwayne pretty much penciled them in as MLS Cup champions in that preview episode. But I'm not as high on it. I've got them as an excellent team, but in the 4th spot come playoff time. And then I rounded out New England, Columbus, and Chicago as 5, 6, and 7. I just don't see those last 3 teams or DC in that upper echelon of the Eastern Conference just yet. I know I just spoke about New England's improvement. Columbus also has brought in some talent. They got another year under Caleb Porter. More importantly, an offseason under Caleb Porter to help bring his style of play more to the forefront. But I think Chicago has done enough. And with Paul Arriola's injury to DC United, I'm not sure how they can recover from his presence. So I think Chicago will sneak into that 7 spot with, if you haven't seen a few of their recent signings, they're rounding out their roster rather nicely.
Awesome. Now taking it to the Western Conference, my pick to make the playoffs out of the Western Conference is LAFC to win the Western Conference, just like they did last season. I expect them to go to the top once again, followed by Seattle Sounders. Sporting Kansas City kind of resurrects, as I spoke of earlier. That 2019 season, forget about it. They're going to be back in the playoff picture, and I have them in the 3rd seed. 4th seed, LA Galaxy, with that crazy attack of Chicharito and Carlos Pavon, or Christian Pavon, and Alexander Katai. Those guys are awesome. 5th seed, Portland Timbers. 6th, Colorado Rapids. And last playoff spot, that 7th seed, goes to San Jose. I think the Earthquakes will squeak in on decision day. Those are my 7 teams out of the West. Colorado and San Jose might not be the best, with the biggest names out there, but I think they're really going to play well. They are strong teams. They have a good team aspect, and both of them have great coaches in Robin Fraser and Matias Almeida. Nick, who do you see making the playoffs out in the Western Conference?
So out west, I have the Galaxy winning the Western Conference. I think their three DPs are probably arguably the best three DP set in the league. I think they have a chip on their shoulder because of LAFC's recent success. I think they have their chip on their shoulder because, you guys are nothing without Zlatan. And when he was here, that's all you were. You were the LA Zlatans. So they've got a chip on their shoulder. And with Chicharito coming in, he's got a chip on his shoulder because he still thinks he can be one of the best strikers in the world. So they don't have to play CONCACAF Champions League. I think they got drawn into the Leagues Cup. I'd have to go back and check that. But they don't have a lot of these extra games like some of these other teams do. So they can go all in on the MLS regular season. I got them winning the West, followed by LAFC, a resurgent Kansas City who just for some reason has a soft spot in my heart. Seattle in fourth, Portland fifth, Houston sixth, and the Rapids rounding out the playoff teams in the seventh spot.
All right, so that takes us to our Supporters Shield. We're going to talk a little bit about the other trophies before we break into our predictions for the MLS Cup finals and pick and the winners. So the Supporters Shield, my pick, out of my two conference winners, I've got Atlanta United and LAFC. I'm going with Atlanta United to win the Supporters Shield. They have not won that yet, so I think they'll be fighting for it. LAFC is going to posture themselves for the playoffs. They took the Supporters Shield last year. They've been there. They've done it. And it's not the biggest priority for teams, especially teams that have already won it. They want that MLS Cup. So I think LAFC will focus on that. Atlanta United will take the Supporters Shield. Nick, who do you have winning the Supporters Shield?
I had a really tough time picking between the Galaxy or NYCFC. Again, I'm high on the Citizens this year, but because they're in CONCACAF Champions League, we all know that usually leaves a hangover for some of these teams, some tired legs. They're doing more minutes management. Maybe they're not putting out their best lineups during the summer, and you drop a few points. But on the flip side, they're playing in the Eastern Conference, which we know is pretty sparse between the top teams and the bottom teams, or there's a big void. So I don't know if that'll balance out for them. I'd have to analyze their schedule a little more in detail to see what Western Conference teams that they're playing, and if they can avoid one of the LA teams in Seattle, or at least play them at home, I think that would give NYC a bigger edge in the Shield. Again, if not New York City, I got to go with the Galaxy because I think they're just going to go on an all-out blitz this year and just try to grab up every win and every three-point affair that they can.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the domestic cups. Let's start out with the U.S. Open Cup. Lots of teams start this out. I would love to make my pick FC Motown since they follow us on Twitter, but however, I don't see that happening. So my pick is going to be an MLS team, of course, and that MLS team is a team that I think will not make the playoffs and kind of have this as their only focus. And that team is Orlando City. This team, they have some good talent, but not enough to make the playoffs, in my opinion. But I do expect them to really prioritize this and make a run. They got very, very close last season, got knocked out in the semifinals, and ended up, almost getting there. This year, I think they do get there and get it done. Orlando City wins the U.S. Open Cup. That's my pick. Nick, who do you have winning the U.S. Open Cup?
I got to go similar logic, different result. A team that played really well last year in the U.S. Open Cup, Minnesota United. I think that if you look pragmatically from the Minnesota United standpoint, they're like, look, we're not going to win the Shield with the two LA teams, Seattle and Portland, in our conference. We're probably not going to compete for a top spot in the playoffs, and in a one-game format, knockout round situation, anything can happen. So our best chance for a trophy is to go in for that U.S. Open Cup, and we've got the experience. We have rebuilt our offense a little bit. Maybe you don't have a big name like Quintero, but you have put other pieces in where you can kind of share share the offensive responsibility, so it's not all falling on his lap. Adrian Heath, pretty good coach, historically speaking. So I think Minnesota's got everything to make another run at the U.S. Open Cup. And, they've got such a history in the United States soccer going back to maybe the 60s, if not sooner than that, that this means something to this organization and to the fans in Minnesota to be able to lift the U.S. Open Cup. So that's my pick. I think the Loons take it.
All right, so the other domestic cup is the Canadian Championship. Just redid their format to allow for regional matchups to get some of those CPL teams like York 9 could meet up with Toronto FC, and Cavalry again meeting up with Vancouver after they knocked them out last season, and the CPL side was really embarrassed Vancouver. That's why my pick for the Canadian Championship is the Vancouver Whitecaps. They have a really strong team. I think they're going to be right there at that playoff run there towards the end. However, I did not pick them to get in. I think they'll finish probably in like that 8th spot. But in the Canadian Championship, they are going to be out to prove that last year was a fluke, that they are not going to lose to a CPL side. They're going to go and win this whole thing. So that's my pick. Nick, what are your thoughts on the Canadian Championship?
I actually have TFC winning this one. I think they are pretty upset about not winning it last year and are going to come out with a bit of a vendetta. And like you said, anytime you say TFC, if Josie's healthy, he usually turns up in big games like this. So I'll give TFC the nod in Canada.
All right, so we gave you our predictions for who is going to be in the playoffs. Now it's time for us to tell you who we think will be in the MLS Cup final and who is going to win it. So first off, my prediction for MLS Cup final is New York City FC against LAFC. New York City, I think they're going to build some momentum from this CONCACAF Champions League run. At least the first result that they got was a good result down at San Carlos. And I expect big things out of this team that really didn't have a bunch of turnover last season other than the new coach. LAFC, this is their number one. This is everything they're going for this year. The amount of talent on that roster is insane. So I have them making MLS Cup, and I also have them winning it. My pick to win MLS Cup in 2020 is LAFC, Carlos Vela, Brian Rodriguez, and that supporting cast. Get it done. LAFC is the champs. Nick, what is your matchup in MLS Cup final, and who do you have winning it all?
Well, before the listeners riot over my pick, like, we gotta let you all know that we can only pick one team. It's February 25th, and we're predicting something 8 months away, essentially. So take that into account. I know I don't have the best track record. Don't take what I say as gospel. Wanted to put that out there. Mike, you went East Coast, West Coast. I also went East Coast, West Coast, but Northwest. I think Seattle repeats as MLS Cup champions this year, and I think they defeat New York City in the MLS Cup final. Seattle, man, the club of the decade, never missed the playoffs, just consistently banging out talent. They can get it done a variety of ways. As good as a season as I think New York City is going to have, I just think Seattle is going to be that much better at the end of the season.
All right, well, there you have it. There is our 2020 MLS Season Preview. Thank you for joining us. Make sure to subscribe down below, and that way you're never going to miss any of our awesome American soccer content. We plan on starting out to do some lives probably in a few weeks. Couldn't get it started in time for the season based on all the team previews and league previews we're doing. So look out for live commentary of a game of the week where I and possibly sometimes Nick will join us, and we will talk about everything that's going on in that game as well as some of the other news and notes. Also, make sure to check out my picks and predictions segment every single week. I will tell you who I think are going to win those games, whether that's for betting purposes or just because you want to know how your favorite team is going to do. So make sure to find that, and we're going to be bringing lots of awesome content. So make sure you subscribe, hit that notification, turn that bell on so you don't miss any of it. Thanks for joining us. We will talk to you guys very, very soon. Enjoy the 2020 MLS season.